Hello Year 6. Today for science we're continuing to have a look at the classification of animals. So last week you had a go at classifying animals or sorting animals into groups based on their similarities and differences. Most of you would not have grouped the animals in exactly the same way. Some of you might have decided to group them by size. Some of you might have decided to group them by what they look like, those animals that look similar. Some of you might have decided to group them by what they eat. This could create problems for scientists if people don't always group animals in the same way. Just want you to take a couple of minutes to have a think about what problems that might cause for scientists. And you can pause the video if you need to. Okay, if not all people in the world classify or group animals in the same way, then actually it can create a bit of confusion and it can lead to animals being called different names. So it's really important that we all scientists follow the same system of grouping animals. So this man on the screen, Carl Linnaeus, he created that system that we use to group animals together. And we call grouping animals, we call it classification. Carl Linnaeus was a Swedish scientist, and he believed it was really important to have this standard system that everyone around the world would follow to group animals. And he was alive in the 1700s. He collected lots of different specimens of plants, animals and shells, and in 1735 he published a book called Systema Nature. This was his system for classifying animals. Over the years he changed it and tweaked it slightly, and actually he produced lots of editions of this book. It was the 10th edition that is the most famous today, and that was published in 1758. Linnaeus' system of classification is called the Linnaean System. Okay, and it just groups all living things, so all things in nature, into a hierarchy. And this is where it gets a little bit more complicated then. So all the living things that there are in our world are separated into 3 domains. So at the top there we've got domains. So plants, animals, and another domain called eukaryotes. So there are 3 domains. Those 3 groups are then split into other groups. So the next layer is kingdoms. So our 3 domains are then split into 6 kingdoms. Those 6 kingdoms are then split into further groups called phylum. In the animal kingdom alone, there are 30 phylum, so 30 different groups within that. Those groups are split further into classes. Those classes are split further into orders. Orders are split further into families. Families are split into genuses. And lastly, we end up with a species. So for one species, there is only going to be one type of animal in that group. So just to show you what that means with a dog. So a dog is in the domain eukarya. And if you look at what other living things are also in that same domain, we've got a jackal, a clownfish, a cat, a ladybird, a daisy, which is quite surprising, a rabbit, a fox, and a human. That group then is then split into kingdoms. Now, if you notice, for the kingdom, the dog falls in the animal kingdom, but the daisy doesn't. So we've lost the daisy. That goes into a different kingdom at this point. That animal kingdom is then split into different phylums. Okay, so the dog is in the same phylum as a clownfish and a jackal and a rabbit. That phylum is then split into more groups, and the dog falls into the class mammals. That class is then split into smaller groups called orders, and the dog is in the same order as a cat, a fox, and a jackal. You notice those are all kind of four-legged animals, okay, but perhaps they all look a little bit similar. That order is then split into a family, so the dog is in the same family as the jackal and the fox. You notice here we've lost the cat. The cat falls into a different family. That family is then split up into genuses, and the dog falls into the same genus as the jackal. And then lastly, as we know, a dog isn't the same as a jackal. When we split it down even further, the dog is the only one within its species. There's only one animal in a species. So this is quite complicated science that we're having to look at today. It's the last two categories, the genus and the species, which give the animal its scientific name. So a dog's scientific name is Canis lupus, because its genus is Canis, its species is lupus. So what our task is going to be today is to take each of these 8 living things and to try to find out their scientific name. So remember, the scientific name comes from the genus and the species. Rather than choosing one of these on the screen, I'm going to try and choose a different animal and find the scientific name and show you how to do that. And I'm just going to use Google, but actually Wikipedia is particularly good for this. Okay, so I'm going to be looking for the genus and the species. So I'm going to look for a guinea pig. Okay, so I started typing it and it's come up, guinea pig, and the top result there is Wikipedia. So I'm just going to click on that. And on Wikipedia, down the side of the page here, it's really useful for this activity. It shows us the scientific classification of the animal. And if you remember, I just want the genus and the species. So for a guinea pig, the genus is Cavia, and the species is C. porcellus. So the scientific name for a guinea pig is Cavia C. porcellus. If you are doing the challenge today and you want to find the complete classification of each animal, again you can use the information down the side here, because actually it's telling us the kingdom. The guinea pig is in the animal kingdom, Animalia, the phylum, the class, the order, the family, and lastly the genus and the species. Okay, so I just want you to have a go at finding the scientific name for each of these 8 living things. Okay, I hope that's all right, Year 6. Obviously feel free to share with me any of your work. I really enjoyed seeing some of your classifications last week.